In this video, we are going to explain the 5 rules every disc golfer needs to know.
Nice birdie.
Thank you. The first rule we're going to be talking about is order of play. Now, order of play is determined by score. So you saw that I got a birdie just a little bit ago. Assuming nobody else on the card got a birdie, that means that I now will have control of the box. What that means is I will be the first one to throw the next drive. Let's say the next person on the card took a par, which is a 3 on most holes, then they will be after me. And let's say another person took a bogey and they will be after them. The way order of play works is it's determined based on score. Whomever scores the best and whoever scores the worst, that's determining how the order goes. So if you score the best, you're probably going to be going first. Now, some people, if you get the same score, then it goes back to the hole prior. What did you do on the hole prior? If you got the same score on that one, it goes back to the hole prior, and so on and so forth.
The second rule that every disc golfer needs to know is OB, or out of bounds. That will clearly be marked on the tee pad of most courses. Sometimes it's going to be a river, as you can see here, or a creek. The road is generally a good OB. The sidewalk can be an OB as well. Going out of bounds usually costs 1 penalty stroke added to your score. If your disc goes out of bounds and does not come back in, you go where your disc goes out of bounds. You would take 1 meter or 3 feet in from where your disc went out, and then you would play from that lie. Usually you would set a mini on the ground or your disc, and then you would throw from behind that area. Say when you drive, you go out of bounds, and then your disc carries, and then it skips or whatever, stays in the air, comes back in bounds. You would play it from where it lies. Yes, it went out of bounds, but it did not stay out of bounds. So therefore you play where it lies. Going into water can be kind of tricky. If the disc is not fully submerged in the creek or whatever body of water that you are playing around, it is not out of bounds. If your disc, it looks like this and is partially in the water, but it's still on dry land, you can get a meter of relief. If your disc is fully submerged or out of play, you would take a stroke, and then you would take your 3 meters still from the same spot and play it where it lies.
The third rule that every disc golfer needs to know is mandatories. What are mandatories and how do they work? Maybe you've watched some pro disc golf before in your time here on YouTube, and you might have seen some mandatories. Maybe it's a single mando, maybe it's a triple mando. The way a mandatory works is there will be a designated spot. Maybe it's on a tree or maybe it's a man-made mando, and you have to go on a specific side of that mandatory. So for example, on this hole, if the tree here on my left is a mandatory, then you would have to throw your disc to the right of that tree. You cannot throw it on the left side of that tree. If you do, that would be a penalty stroke. Maybe you'll have to go to a drop zone. Maybe you'll have to cross around the mandatory again. Something new this year is if you cross the mandatory but your disc rolls back around on the wrong side of the mandatory, you have failed to hit the mandatory and you still have to go through the mandatory. Sometimes if you're playing in a bigger event, you might see a triple mando. That's when you have a mandatory on the right side, the left side, and up above. So you would have to throw it kind of in that square rectangle-ish area in order to hit the mandatory. If you would go over, you would miss it. If you'd go too far right, you would miss it. If you'd go too far left, you would miss it. The most common triple mando is at the USDGC. If you watch any of that coverage, you know what I'm talking about. So I'm now going to show you how to properly hit this mandatory. So right there, what you can see is I threw my disc to the right side of this tree right here, which means I hit the mandatory.
The fourth rule every disc golfer needs to know when going to play is footfault. What a footfault is when you are lining up to take your shot or when you're driving off the tee, it is going past your lie or your line of play towards the basket or wherever you are throwing the disc. There are a few different ways you can have a footfault. You have the size of a sheet of paper, rectangle, square, whatever you want to call it, behind the disc where your feet can be. So if you line up, say your lie is right there and you line up over here, someone could call you for a football because you are not within the imaginary sheet of paper. Now, another way to have a footfault is say you're driving for your approach and you step on the disc. Don't want to step on your disc, sorry about that, Quentin. You step on the disc, that is a footfault. If you are putting inside circle 1, and you lose your balance when you putt, and then you fall forward and step, that is also a footfault. The other footfault could be when you're going off the tee pad. We are not on the tee pad, we are out in the middle of the hole, but if you're going off the tee pad and you step off the front of the tee pad before you release the disc, that is a footfault. As long as you are on the tee pad when you release the disc, that is not a footfault. But if you Say this is the tee pad and I am throwing in my run up and I step off and then release, that is a foot fault. What happens when you get a foot fault, or when someone calls a foot fault on you, is you get 1 stroke added to your score for that hole.
The 5th and final rule every disc golfer needs to understand is actually kind of tied to the last rule you just heard Trenton explain. It's circle 1. Inside of circle 1, you are unable to fall forward or have your opposite foot come ahead of your lie. Inside circle 1, you have to maintain control of your body until the disc is come to rest inside the basket. Circle 1 is approximately 10 meters or 33 feet. So if you are outside of 33 feet, you are able to step through with your putt. But if you are inside of 33 feet or 10 meters, you have to maintain control until the disc has come to rest. So there you have it, the 5 rules every disc golfer needs to know. Make sure if you've enjoyed this video, you hit the like and subscribe button, comment down below which rule would you add to this list. If you're interested in improving your game, check out another video on screen now.